Listen up, security operations centers, incident responders, and network defenders. We've got a Code Ninja security advisory on our hands. So since May 27, 2026, financially motivated threat actors, we're talking specifically about the group known as ShinyHunters. They've been silently achieving total, absolute takeover of Oracle PeopleSoft environments. And they're doing this using a nasty, unauthenticated zero-day vulnerability tracked as CVE 2026-35273. They are in there moving laterally, exfiltrating highly sensitive enterprise data, and just dropping extortion markers. Guys, this is not a drill, and I'll tell you right now, your standard playbook, it's going to leave you completely exposed. Look, the whole objective of this explainer today is to force immediate, decisive defensive action. We are looking at a scenario where your enterprise resource planning platform, the literal crown jewels holding your financial, HR, and student data, well, it might already be compromised. I really need to make one thing crystal clear right out of the gate here. Simply applying the vendor's emergency patch will not save you. Sure, a patch closes the door, but it absolutely does not evict an attacker who has already breached your perimeter, set up persistence, and made themselves right at home.
Okay, let's dive into this timeline to, well, shatter any illusion of safety you might still be holding on to. On May 27, zero-day exploitation begins in the wild. Attackers are quietly mapping and compromising exposed endpoints. Then, fast forward 2 full weeks to June 9, and boom, the stolen data is already being posted to the ShinyHunters extortion leak site. It wasn't until June 10 that Oracle released their out-of-band emergency patch, and then by June 12, CISA added this to their known exploited vulnerabilities catalog. Put simply, that means there was a massive 2-week window where your perimeter was just entirely defenseless against a silent, unauthenticated attack. 2 whole weeks.
And that brings us to the severity score, 9.8 out of 10 on the CVSS 3.1 scale. Yikes. Listen, this isn't some theoretical bug requiring local access or complex phishing schemes to trick a user. No, this is a critical, missing authentication flaw. It requires no privileges whatsoever. 0. It requires no user interaction. Literally, if your vulnerable endpoint is routed to the internet or accessible via compromised internal network, an attacker can simply send a specially crafted HTTP request and execute arbitrary code right on your server.
So let's establish the actual blast radius here. The affected targets are Oracle PeopleSoft Enterprise PeopleTools versions 8.61 and 8.62. Specifically, the flaw exists right within the Updates Environment Management component. The threat intelligence shows this campaign is heavily targeting the higher education sector. In fact, nearly 68% of known victims are universities and colleges. But hey, make no mistake, if your organization runs these supported versions, or even some unsupported legacy instance you forgot about, your ERP platform and all its integrated HR, finance, and procurement data, it's at immediate critical risk.
All right, I'm going to pause here for a brief communication link setup. Do you read? Acknowledge receipt. As a security professional, you need real-time, actionable intelligence to defend your perimeter. That's a fact. I strongly instruct you to subscribe to @CyberTech79 right now and enable those notifications. Consider it a strict security necessity. And if you are receiving this intel loud and clear, hit like below as a formal acknowledgement of receipt. We rely on coordinated intelligence sharing to stay one step ahead of these threat actors, guys. Acknowledgement received. Moving into the next phase, the blast radius, mechanics of CVE 2026-35273.
So the underlying flaw here is a server-side request forgery, or SSRF. At its core, this vulnerability allows an attacker to manipulate your PeopleSoft server into making requests on their behalf. Basically, the attackers are routing requests containing internal loopback addresses like 127.0.0.1 or localhost right through exposed environment management hubs. And because the request originates from the server itself, it bypasses your normal authentication boundaries entirely. In this specific attack chain, the SSRF serves as the exact mechanism to achieve full remote code execution.
Now, what's really interesting about the data here is the dual-pronged nature of the attack vector. On one hand, you have the inbound execution vector. These are unauthenticated HTTP post requests hitting specific endpoints like /BSM hub, /hub, and the HTTP listening connector. But look at the secondary attack vector, outbound credential theft. This is wild. The exploit chain can actually force the target system to make outbound SMB connections over TCP port 445 to external attacker-controlled destinations. The goal here is to capture Windows machine account net NTLM hashes. Why? Because that instantly gives the attacker the keys for lateral movement across your entire Microsoft domain.
You really have to understand that a takeover of PeopleTools equals total platform compromise, full stop. PeopleTools is the technical foundation. It's the shared infrastructure supporting all your high-value workflows. This pre-authentication flaw grants an attacker total control over that enterprise application stack. Think about it. If they control the platform, they control the database, the integration broker, and literally every piece of sensitive data flowing through it. Let's look at how this dictates our immediate defensive response. All right, pivoting to the protocol, immediate mitigation and triage. This is where we stop admiring the problem and start executing real exposure management.
So the crucial point is this: you must bypass your standard quarterly patch cycles immediately. First up, apply Oracle's emergency patch for versions 8.61 and 8.62. But if you can't patch immediately, you absolutely must execute compensating controls. Go ahead and disable the EM Hub service entirely in multi-server setups, or just remove PSMUB altogether. Next, block all external access to those vulnerable endpoints at the WAF or firewall level, and don't worry, this is considered non-breaking for standard end-user browser sessions. Finally, tightly monitor and block any unauthorized outbound TCP port 445 traffic. Secure that perimeter right now.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why patching is simply not enough. Remember that 2-week exploitation window? Because of that, you must aggressively hunt through your web tier file system and network logs for any pre-patch compromise. Specifically, look for Mesh Central remote management agents that are masquerading as Azure services, stuff like meshagent64-azureops.exe. Check your perimeter logs for command and control traffic heading to azure-netfiles.net or the 142.11.200 subnet. Hunt for any unexpected .jsp web shells dropped under your psmhub.war directories. And honestly, obviously, look for the literal extortion marker text files the ShinyHunters group leaves behind. I mean, they aren't exactly known for being subtle house guests, right?
Users need to know to protect their systems. That quote right there is the foundational ethic behind Coordinated Vulnerability Disclosure, or CVD. We don't hide these messy details, we expose them. Transparency is absolutely the only way to force defenders to wake up, bypass those endless bureaucratic change management delays, and actually look for pre-patch persistence. Because the truth is, if you don't know exactly how the attack works, you cannot prove that your network is clean.
So I want to leave you with this highly provocative thought as you go brief your incident response teams today. You patched the system, sure, but did you actually evict the attacker? Please, do not let a successful patch deployment give you a false sense of security. Go check your access logs, correlate your service requests, and conduct a full forensic triage of your environment. You need to assume breach until your telemetry definitively proves otherwise. Apply the protocols we've discussed today. Lock down your management interfaces, and as always, stay secure.